Have you ever had the strange feeling that you're following a script you didn't write? As if your decisions, your desires, even your fears weren't entirely your own? That maybe you're just playing a role, the role of you, on a stage that was set long before you were born? Imagine life as a vast game, a game with invisible rules, complex characters, ever-changing goals, and a constantly shifting environment. Now ask yourself, who put you in this game? Did you choose to play it? And more importantly, who's controlling your character? Philosophers and thinkers throughout history have wrestled with these questions. From Plato to Schopenhauer, from Descartes to Baudrillard, the idea that reality might be an illusion or a simulation is ancient, yet more relevant than ever. Modern science, technology, and psychology have added even more intriguing layers to the puzzle. What if, in the end, you're nothing more than an avatar inside a much larger narrative? Let's explore this by starting with a fundamental idea: self-awareness. What is this I you feel inside you? Is it an autonomous entity, a soul, a bundle of biological impulses, or just an interface created by the brain to survive in a hostile environment? According to some neuroscientists, consciousness is a kind of useful illusion, a mental construction that gives cohesion to countless fragmented processes. In other words, the self might be just a functional fiction. And if that's true, who's playing the game? Psychologist Carl Jung introduced the concept of the persona, the social mask we wear to interact with the world. But if you wear a mask for long enough, it eventually fuses with your face. You begin to believe you are the mask, and so you become a character within the social narrative, acting, speaking, even thinking in the way others expect you to, which brings us to the idea of free will. How much of your choices are truly your own? If you were born in a specific country, at a specific time, with a specific culture, into a particular family, with unique genes, traumas, and experiences, could you really have chosen to be someone else? Or are you just following a script, a well-written character who believes they're spontaneous? The idea that we're stuck in a role can be unsettling, but also liberating, because once you realize you're in a game, you can begin to play more consciously, not to beat others, but to understand the rules, exploit the glitches, and maybe even find ways to hack the system. But what if the game metaphor is more literal than we think? Philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed the simulation hypothesis, the idea that future humans or higher intelligences could create hyper-realistic simulations of their ancestors. And if we're inside one of those simulations, then everything we feel, think, and decide is part of a grand program. It might sound like science fiction, but major voices like Elon Musk and even NASA scientists have taken the idea seriously. After all, we're surrounded by virtual realities, algorithms predicting our actions, and social media manipulating our emotions. Maybe it's not so far-fetched to imagine it's all part of a testing environment, an existential lab. If you're a character, who wrote your code? Who defined your missions? And is it possible to break the system? More than answering these questions, this video aims to plant a healthy seed of doubt. The kind of doubt felt by someone waking up inside a dream, beginning to ask, is this real? Or just part of a carefully crafted storyline meant to keep my mind occupied? Welcome to the game of life. Get ready to question everything. Now imagine that the game has no single creator. Imagine a game shaped in real time by billions of minds, billions of narratives, all colliding, overlapping, influencing one another. In this scenario, you're not just a character. You're also a partial author, a limited co-creator, moved by invisible forces, yet still holding a flicker of agency. But how real is that agency? Eastern philosophy, especially Buddhism, has long challenged the very existence of a fixed self. To the Buddhist mind, the self is an illusion. There is no permanent core within you. What exists is a constant flow of sensations, thoughts, and emotions, like clouds drifting across the sky. The mind is more like a mirror, reflecting the world, but holding no shape of its own. And if that's true, then maybe this game has no players, only pieces, moving according to the laws of impermanence. Meanwhile, in the West, Nietzsche foresaw something just as radical when he proclaimed the death of God. Without a divine creator to guarantee meaning, we are cast into the world, condemned to freedom. That is, we are forced to invent our own meaning, even when life feels like a chaotic board with no rule book. But what if the game is more sophisticated than we think? Think about the way you live today. You wake up to an alarm, you plug into digital networks, you interact through curated interfaces, you make decisions subtly shaped by invisible algorithms. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, they watch you, they track your habits, they mold the content you see, they shape your perception of reality. Is that free will or just advanced conditioning? George Orwell warned us about surveillance in 1984. But what we face now is more insidious. It's not oppression, it's seduction. You're not forced to follow a path. You're gently persuaded to want exactly what the system expects you to want. And here, the question becomes even more complex. If you feel like you're choosing, but your desires have been engineered by forces you don't control, is that still freedom? In psychology, the concept of self-concept echoes this idea of a constructed identity. From childhood, we build a story about who we are, shaped by what others say, by praise and criticism, by roles we're assigned. You're shy, you're smart, you're rebellious. Over time, those labels become our mask, and even when we change, we cling to the role because it feels safer, because stepping outside the script requires courage, and most would rather preserve the illusion than face the abyss of the unknown. Now ask yourself, how many times have you acted a certain way simply because it was expected? How many times have you stayed silent, behaved, dressed, chosen, or withheld? Because your character would do that? Because breaking character would mean confusion, disruption, a crisis? But maybe, just maybe, those moments of rupture are the most authentic glimpses of who we really are. Jean-Paul Sartre said we are condemned to be free. That condemnation lies in the fact that there is no essence before existence. You are not born with a purpose. You exist, and then you must craft one. But the social, cultural, and psychological game we're embedded in works relentlessly to convince you otherwise. It wants you to follow the manual, to believe there's a right path, a natural order, a script to fulfill, and that's comforting. It's like playing with the tutorial always turned on. But there's a danger. You might reach the end of the game without ever taking control, without ever being you. Just a reflection of everything others told you you should be. And that's why some philosophers, artists, and mystics chose to burn it all down. They tore off the masks, they abandoned the script, they embraced the pain and isolation of walking paths no one had mapped before. They were called mad, heretics, fools, but perhaps they were the only conscious players in a game full of sleepwalkers. So now, the question is, will you keep playing as an NPC, a non-playable character, moved by scripts and triggers you didn't write? Or are you ready to face the discomfort of taking the controls? Being the player takes more than courage, it takes responsibility. Because once you see the system, you can't unsee it. You can't pretend to be asleep. You have to choose. You have to create. You have to fall, fail, break, and keep playing. Even with no guarantee the game has an end, or that anyone is watching from the outside. And what if, in the end, the most important question isn't who created the game, but rather, who do you choose to be within it? Because even if the universe is a simulation, even if reality is just a projection of the mind, even if there is no fixed self. Still, there's something pulsing inside you right now, a restlessness, a spark that wants to understand, that wants to feel, that wants to be more than a pre-programmed character. Maybe that is what makes us human, the ability to question the game itself, to peer into the structure, to see the gears turning, and still choose to act with intention, even knowing we are limited, shaped by countless external forces. We keep searching for meaning. We keep creating art, science, philosophy, love. We keep trying to transcend the code, and that perhaps is the most beautiful paradox of all. We may never escape the game, but we can rewrite the rules. We can play with awareness, with compassion, with clarity. We can use the persona as a tool, not a prison. We can write new plots for old characters. And above all, we can remember that we are both actor and author, both game and player. Many spiritual traditions sensed this long before technology ever suggested the simulation hypothesis. In Hinduism, there's the concept of Lila, the divine play. The idea that the universe is Shiva's cosmic dance, a theater in which the divine experiences itself in infinite forms. In this view, we're not separate from the creator. We are expressions of it. Characters and authors in the same story. Existentialism, on the other hand, offers a different kind of truth. Freedom doesn't come from outside. It isn't a gift. It's a constant act of construction. And that's terrifying, because with no pre-written script, no guaranteed role, everything depends on you. And what do you do with that responsibility? Most people choose to follow the script. Wake up, work, consume, sleep, repeat. Because it's easy, because it feels safe, because it avoids the abyss. But deep down, we all know, even if only in rare silent moments, that something is off with this theater. That something inside us feels squeezed, compressed, suffocated by the repetition. Life begins to change when you look in the mirror and ask, who's there? Not your name, not your ID, not your job or status, but the real you behind the eyes. Who is it that observes the thoughts? Who listens to the noise, inside and out? Who feels that they're meant for more, even without knowing exactly what? Maybe that's the beginning of true freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to be who you are, even if the world tells you otherwise. Even if the system tries to push you into a function. Even if the logic of the game demands that you compete, conquer, accumulate. Because once you awaken, you realize the true game isn't against others. It's against ignorance, against automation, against the numbness of existence. And that's when the game gets interesting. You start to notice the patterns, the loops, the default lines, and like in a lucid dream, you begin to experiment with new choices. You respond differently, you act differently, you feel differently. You begin to live with presence. Maybe there's no final objective. Maybe the game doesn't end in glory. Maybe the purpose is simply to play with truth, with wholeness. And that's revolutionary, because in a world desperate to turn you into a number, a function, a cog, to be deeply human is the greatest act of resistance. So next time you feel like you're just playing a role, pause, breathe, observe, and ask yourself, is this what I want, or is this just what's expected of me? Is this truly me, or just the character I built to survive? The answer may not come right away. It might take days, years, lifetimes. But the act of asking already changes everything, because doubt is the crack where the light gets in. It's the glitch in the system. It's the first step out of autopilot. And even if life remains a game, chaotic, uncertain, mysterious, you can still choose how you play it, with awareness, with courage, with authenticity. In the end, the question, are you just a character? In the game of life was never meant to give you an answer. It was meant to wake you up, Life might be a grand stage, a multi-layered game, a code running in constant motion, but that doesn't mean you're trapped. Because even if the rules exist, you still get to choose how you play. You can follow the script or tear it apart. You can perform the role they gave you or write a new one. You can live asleep or awaken to consciousness. The choice was never easy, but it has always been yours. It's not about discovering whether you're just a character. It's about deciding what kind of character you want to be and whether you're willing to reshape the game from within. Because maybe the meaning of life was never to escape the game, but to play it so consciously that the game is never the same again.